Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Friday Ramblings. We're actually going to go a little bit off the schedule that I hinted at last week. This will not be the follow-up pseudo-sequel to our discussion on the Captain Marvel legacy. That will occur next week. We're changing the script up because this is something I just want to go ahead and talk about because I need to talk about this, and it's, the sooner the better. You might have found out from the title, this is our salute to the recently departed George Perez. George Perez was a comic book writer and artist who worked for both DC and Marvel for hold on, let me see when he actually from the 2010s and 73, so for 40 years. He worked in the comic book industry, most of that in as I said, the big two, Marvel and DC. He did do some independent work as well for, the smaller labels. So, all great. The reason I'm doing this now and say, well, I kind of have to talk about this is, well, simply put, George Perez has, between writer and artist, been involved in some of my favorite comic books. Mostly on that front, I am going to say it is the new Teen Titans run, which is what he is most iconically associated with, along with his partner Marv Wolfman. They also teamed up to be the head creatives on the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, which we have discussed in a previous rambling. Please check our archives out for that. We covered most of the brief summary of the various Crisis events, but he wasn't involved in the later ones. This is just, it's, as of when this video goes live, it will have been a week. He died on May 6th, 2022, and we knew it was coming because he had been sick and had publicly stated this. But it's just, all week every time I thought about the man, I feel so sad. It's not just the work he did, but the man he was personally. But let's, we are celebrating his life, so let's do this from the top. And that is that George Perez was born on June 9th, 1954 in New York City. And he is of Puerto Rican descent. And that's it. I'm sorry. It's just kind of really, this is going to be kind of an awkward one, folks. Bear with me. But George has a younger brother, David, and both brothers aspired at a young age to be artists. George beginning to draw at the age of 5. George Perez's first involvement with the professional comics industry was as artist Rich Buckler, who worked on the Fantastic Four in the mid-70s and created the character Deathlock, who in one form or another still shows up in Marvel to this day, so good on Rich Buckler. But he was Rich Buckler's assistant in 73 and made his professional debut in Astonishing Tales 25 in August of 74 as penciler of a 2-page satire of Buckler's character Deathlock, who was the main star of that comic. Perez soon began penciling a run of Sons of the Tiger, an action-adventure strip published in the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu magazine that was authored by Marvel legend Bill Mantlo. He and Mantlo created the subsequent character, the White Tiger, which was comics' first Puerto Rican superhero. However, his first big gig that really got his name out there was when he worked on the Avengers, starting with issue 141. George Perez would also illustrate the Inhumans book, as well as Fantastic Four, working with Roy Thomas on Fantastic Four 176, which was a metafictional story in which the Impossible Man visited the offices of Marvel Comics and met numerous comics creators. It would be on a subsequent Fantastic Four annual where George would work with his most prolific partner, Marv Wolfman, for the first time. Perez drew the first part of Jim Shooter's Korvac saga as part of his run on Avengers, and they introduced the character of Henry Peter Gyrick, the Avengers liaison to the United States National Security Council, who has gone on to appear in many Marvel comics over the decades as the de facto superhero community-linked government jerk. Depending on the writer, Gyrick has been portrayed as an outright antagonist, or somebody who has good intentions, supports superheroes, but is also very, very much a believer in government oversight and control of any form of bringers of justice, which would include the superhero community. So, we get to the big one, the New Teen Titans, and his jump to DC. In 1980, while still drawing the Avengers for Marvel, Perez began working for their rival DC Comics. This actually was not that unheard of for many decades, because a lot of guys worked more of a freelance style than having hard, long-term contracts. Offered the art chores for the launch of the New Teen Titans, written by Wolfman, Perez's real incentive was the opportunity to draw Justice League of America, which was an ambition of Perez's, where he was quoted as saying that it seemed like a natural progress from the Avengers. Perez did have a stint on JLA, which was popular with the fans. However, his greatest attention and appreciation was on the New Teen Titans, which had its introduction in the anthology book DC Comics Presents, specifically issue 26, from October of 1980. This incarnation of the Titans was intended to be DC's answer to Marvel's increasingly popular X-Men book, and it became highly successful. For those of you who are not super familiar with Titans history, the reason the book was called The New Teen Titans is there had been a Teen Titans book published in previous decades that had done decent sales but had run its course and had been out of print for a while when Wolfman came in and had an idea to reboot it using some of the previous cast, which is where you get Kid Flash, Robin, Wonder Girl, and then Speedy, later Red Arrow, Arsenal, Roy Harper. Along with newly created characters Starfire, Cyborg, Raven, and well, he wasn't newly created, but Beast Boy was a bring-over from related comic Doom Patrol, where he was kind of a recurring character and an unofficial team member. He hadn't appeared much, so this was a chance to give him a big spotlight. And Perez did all the art duties on this, which included some major progress with his details, especially on the faces of the different characters, over the course of a 4-year run on the book, leading to him becoming one of the most popular artists in comics, having won multiple industry awards during this period. One of the great examples of this is, from the get-go, we knew there was something mysterious and dangerous about the character Raven. And it would not really come out and really hit its major zenith until years into Titans, when her father Trigon, who is basically an interdimensional analog of Satan, very, very evil, very dangerous, very scary character, made his big assault on Earth. But because Wolfman and Perez knew that was where they were eventually going with Raven, Perez had every so many issues would subtly tweak the way he drew Raven, so that when everything came to a head, the sign that the Titans saw was when they were going over security footage. They had noticed over time Raven's face had become more angular, sharper features, and essentially she was starting to look creepier and more subtly evil. And it's like you see Cyborg looking at this on a video screen and talking about it, but the images he's looking at for this is actual stills from the comic, because that was what Perez did. He knew that that was going to be where they were eventually going to get with Raven, so from very early on, he set that up. It wasn't something they just threw in and expect you to believe. Folks could go back and look at their issues and see, lay them out, binge through all their art of Raven and go, he's right. Raven's facial features have subtly shifted in this manner over the years. We never noticed, because it was done so carefully and progressively. Which is just, and again, it's stuff like that other artists go, bravo, man, bravo. Like, when that all culminated in the story, and the story pointed out, and like everybody realized it, that was just, that was something people just didn't do. I've still never heard of somebody pulling that stunt off again as an homage or anything, because, partly is it's rare to have a good 4 or 5 year run on a book to be able to do the slow progressive subtlety, but for any given artist or writer these days, still though, even a shorter version of that over like 4 or 5 arcs, just it's extremely hard to pull off. But anyway, that was the major run on Teen Titans. He took a leave of absence in '84 to focus on the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which purportedly featured every single character DC owned, as it was their first huge company crossover event. And Perez was the head artist, although he was inked on the series by Dick Giordano, Mike DiCarlo, and Jerry Ordway. After Crisis, Perez inked the final issue of Superman, issue 423, over Kurt Swan's pencils for part 1 of the 2-part story, Whatever Happened in the Man of Tomorrow, by writer Alan Moore. This arc was done to serve as a final story salute to the pre-Crisis version of Superman, before the post-Crisis one officially took hold of the regular series. Perez then was one of the artists on Batman number 400 for working on the History of the DC Universe limited series to summarize the revised history of the post-Crisis universe. However, his major role came when he got involved with the 1987 reboot of the Wonder Woman franchise. Writer Greg Potter had spent several months working with editor Janice Race on new concepts for the character before being joined by Perez. Perez came in as the plotter and penciler of the series, which tied the character more closely to the Greek gods, jettisoning many other unnecessary elements of her history. Perez at first worked with Potter and Len Wein, but eventually took over the full scripting chores. Later, Mandy Newell would join Perez as co-writer for nearly a year. The series is considered a very successful relaunch of one of DC's major characters. Perez would work on the title for 5 years, leaving as artist after issue 24, but remaining as writer up to issue 62, leaving in 1992. Perez would then return to the character in 2001, co-writing a 2-part story in 168 and 169 with writer/artist Phil Jimenez. Perez also drew the cover for Wonder Woman 600 in August of 2010, as well as some interior art. His departure from the book would come with a little bit of within the industry drama, as the last major arc he had done was involved butting some heads with editorial over it, as it was supposed to be a big DC event, but he felt that the editor and some other people at DC were undermining the event. It was tied into Wonder Woman's big anniversary. I want to say, 50th anniversary, yeah. Perez basically just felt like DC was understating the anniversary as compared to what they had done for 50-year anniversaries for other characters and the company as a whole, which was what the Crisis on Infinite Earths was about in the 80s. So he left the book with some bad feelings towards certain people at DC. However, he would return to the Titans in 88 with issue 50, rewriting the origin of Wonder Girl following the retcons in Crisis on Infinite Earths. He would remain as penciler through issue 60, only providing layouts for 61, with artist Tom Grummett finishing pencils and Bob McLeod as inker. Perez remained as inker for the cover art to issue 63 to 67, co-plotting the stories for 66 and 67 before departing from the Titan series once again. So that brings us up to, as I said, 1991 with leaving Wonder Woman and the War of the Gods event, which there was some drama and some hurt feelings on multiple sides from multiple people over the disagreements on how to market the book. One of his also complaints was that the War of the Gods was not put in newsstand distribution, which meant that people would have to specifically go to comic book shops, the specialty shops that really only the hardcore base fans go to buy the book, the limited series that served as the core of the War of the Gods story, instead of, like with their regular monthly books, offering it in the specialty shops and on newsstands where casual people could walk up to it and go, "Oh my god, it's 50th anniversary of Wonder Woman. Oh, they're doing this crazy special story. I should probably pick that up. I mean, yeah, I haven't read a Wonder Woman story for a few years, but I mean, if this is a big anniversary event story, yeah." He felt like that cost them a lot of potential casual customer buys. But it was a thing, you know. this happens with a lot of creative people. However, in 91, Perez did sign on to pencil the 6-issue limited series Infinity Gauntlet for Marvel Comics, which was written by Jim Starlin. Incredible writer in and of himself. However, due to the drama going on concurrently with War of the Gods, it's a very stressful personal period for Perez, and he was not able to finish penciling the entire run of Infinity Gauntlet, leaving the project at issue 4. The Infinity Gauntlet editorial team decided to find a replacement artist to finish the mini-series, and Ron Lim was the artist chosen. Because of the War of the Gods issues and leaving Infinity Gauntlet, Perez's reputation suffered as he was accused of being a creator who could not finish projects as planned. He did not help that impression when he began working with Malibu Comics, drawing Breakthrough and Ultra Force, part of Malibu's Ultraverse imprint, and then working at Techno Comics, drawing iBots. However, leaving the runs early as he had no enthusiasm drawing the characters and lost interest in drawing the books. He would then work on smaller projects in the 90s, including working on the Jurassic Park comic book adaptation of the movie for Topps Comics, which was adapted by Walt Simonson and penciled by Gil Kane, two other incredible people. Perez doing the inking. But most notably, at Marvel Comics, he worked on the Hulk Future Imperfect story written by Peter David. David is named Perez's favorite artistic collaborator, and one of the 3 artists whose art has most closely matched the visuals he conceived when writing a comic book script. The others being Leonard Kirk and Dale Keown. Perez would return to DC Comics in October 1996 for a new incarnation of the Teen Titans. Teen Titans Volume 2 was written and penciled by Dan Jurgens, with Perez as inker for the first 15 issues of the 24-issue run. Perez would then have a stint as writer of Silver Surfer 111 through 123 in the mid-90s. He would also write the crossover special Silver Surfer Superman in 96. Perez would then work on the 3rd volume of Avengers written by Kurt Busiek, where he remained for nearly 3 years, again receiving critical and fan acclaim for his polished and dynamic art. I have seen the first about year and a half of this Avengers run, and yes, I'm trying to stay calm here, trying to focus on speaking, but if you had seen his art on, stuff like the Titans and Wonder Woman, that art is just distinctly George Perez, and it is some of the best that the Avengers have ever looked, especially up to that point. I behoove you, look up that volume of the Avengers. Kurt Busiek writes some great stories as part of it.
Power off.
Sorry. It was a great team up for them, and seeing Perez getting to write the Avengers, which I know, or not write, but draw the Avengers, and he had done it previously, as we discussed. In the intervening decades, though, new characters have been brought in, so it was his first chance to draw some of them, and even the old characters, he had gotten so much better as an artist since then that getting to draw them when he was much closer to his artistic peak, if not at his peak, it was just great. Yes, please go look up that between the writing and the art. It is a great. It is a great run on the Avengers. So some wonderful stories. Starts off with a great jumping on point. Just go for it. Can't recommend that period of Avengers enough. He and Busiek then produced the long-awaited JLA Avengers Intercompany crossover, which saw print in late 2003. Again, I have read this. Brilliant story. Very much worth reading if you've never read it and have any interest in these characters. A crossover between two teams had first been published in the 1980s, they had wanted to do it, but differences between DC and Marvel forced the comic book to be canceled. So, it was a project that was a long time coming, especially in the minds of the fans. They had waited like 20 years for it to finally be done. Let's see what we go here. In the 2000s, he returned to DC, working as guest artist for an issue of JSA, number 82. Was cover artist for 82 through 87. Drew the first 10 issues of DC's Brave and the Bold with writer Mark Waid. Volume 2, because this was the 2007 version. There was a previous Brave and the Bold in like the 60s or 70s. Perez worked on Infinite Crisis, a follow-up to the Crisis on Infinite Earths as a fill-in artist. Worked on the Final Crisis Legion of Three Worlds miniseries, which means he had contributed to every chapter of DC's Crisis trilogy. And he was co-chair of the board of the comic book industry charity, the Hero Initiative, serving on its disbursement committee. And as well as having an animated version of him make cameo appearances in the Teen Titans animated series. There are also being references to him in later episodes, including a Bank of Perez. The MMORPG City of Heroes had a zone within the game named after him, Perez Park. This brings us up to the 2010s, in which DC launched a new Superman series written by Perez, who also provided breakdowns and cover art, with interior art by Jesus Marina and Nicola Scott. Perez remained until issue number 6. The New Teen Titans games hardcover graphic novel, as in New Teen Titans, games. I know the way I originally said it's kind of sounded weird. But it was a hardcore graphic novel that was published the same month, reuniting the creative team of Wolfman and Perez. It was basically kind of a flashback story in a way. I've read it. It was something where it was a storyline they had wanted to do at one point earlier in Titans history. Things didn't get around to it. It was eventually greenlit and published years later. So if you've read the old Titans run, it's a great follow-up story. To fans of the New Teen Titans and that classic Wolfman and Perez era, I do recommend grabbing it if you can find a copy. It is an excellent book for Titans fans. He was also inker of the then current Green Arrow series over artist Dan Jurgens' pencils. And Perez and Kevin Maguire were alternating artists on a World's Finest revival written by Paul Levitz. In July 2012, Perez explained his departure from Superman as reaction to the level of editorial oversight, including inconsistent reasons given for rewrites of his material, the inability of editors to explain to him basic aspects of the new 52 Superman status quo, and restrictions imposed by having to be consistent with Action Comics, which was set 5 years earlier in Superman, situation that was complicated due to writer Grant Morrison's having not been forthcoming about their plans. Which means, in short, Grant would write a bunch of stuff, and at the last minute, Perez would have to rewrite scripts to keep in continuity with what Morrison was doing, instead of him giving Perez outlines for several arcs ahead so that Perez could work his scripts at a good time. But, we're not completely dogging Grant Morrison here, just saying that was Perez's perspective on the situation. Perez then wrote and drew 6 issues of his own creation, Sirens, published by Boom Studios. It is a science fiction miniseries dedicated to a group of women with extraordinary powers who fight against evil across time and space. Perez would then formally retire in 2019 due to various health issues. And so we get to the personal stuff. I'll take a quick moment here, and this will be our wrap-up. Perez was married to Caroline Flynn. He had no children, although he had his aforementioned brother David, who had children of his own. Thus, Perez had a niece and nephew he was very close to. And in December 2021, as I had said at the start, he had been public about this. He had revealed that after undergoing surgery for a blockage in his liver, he'd been diagnosed with inoperable pancreatic cancer. Given a prognosis of 6 to 12 months, he chose not to pursue treatment, wanting instead to spend as much time as possible with his family without being on a lot of drugs and painkillers and being weak from the cancer treatments. And a lot of people know people that have had to deal with cancer on various levels. I've had multiple family members that have gone through it. I think it's part of why Perez's situation has hit close to me. And I can't find fault with his decision. It was inoperable. There was no, even with treatment, they were not guaranteeing him more than a year. So he chose what was best for him and his loved ones, to be there mentally and physically as much as he could, because look, cancer treatments do wear you out. They are not we do not have really good treatments for cancer, especially something where there really isn't much that the treatment's going to do for you anyway. It's maybe only going to give you a few more months. He went a very brave route to just let things play out the way they the way they were going to play out. And just mad props to George Perez for that. And so much to his family. I can't imagine what they went through for these 6 months. But in early 2022, after this had gotten out of the public, DC and Marvel included tributes to him and his work in their comics for jointly approving a limited run reprint of the 2003 JLA Avengers story he had illustrated, which had long been out of print due to disagreements between the rival publishers. And the limited run reprint was done as a benefit for the Hero Initiative that Perez had been affiliated with. An open memorial service has scheduled to be held at MegaCon Orlando later this month on May 22nd. If you're watching this video months, years down the line, obviously this will be past tense, but as of when this video is going live on the 13th, that has not happened yet. Real quick, Perez won a 1979 Eagle Award for his work on the Avengers 1 through 67 through 77, and in 1980 won the Eagle Award for his cover of Avengers 185. He also won the Eagle Award for favorite penciler in 1986 and an Ink Pot Award in 1983. In 1985, DC Comics named Perez as one of the honorees in the company's 50th anniversary publication, 50 Who Made DC Great. His work on the New Teen Titans number 50 earned a nomination for the 1985 Jack Kirby Award for Best Single Issue, and his collaboration with Wolfman on Crisis on Infinite Earths earned the Jack Kirby Award for Best Finite Series in 85 and 86. It was a 12-issue series, and so it did span multiple calendar years, since it did not start exactly at the start of 85. Perez has won several Comic Buyer's Guide fan awards, including Favorite Artist in 83 and 85, Favorite Penciler in 87, Favorite Cover Artist in 85, 86, and 87, and the Crisis on Infinite Earths won the award for Favorite Limited Series in 85, as well as Favorite Comic Book Story awards have been won for the Judas Contract story, Beyond the Silent Night, which was from Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, and The Lonely Place of Dying crossover story arc, which spanned Batman 440 through 442 and New Titans, just New Titans, after they renamed the book, 60 through 61. 2022, Perez was awarded with the Inkwell Awards Stacey Aragon Special Recognition Award for his lifetime achievement in inking. I mean, just in closing, this was a man. He didn't, yes, as I said before, like any great creative person, he did butt heads with editors a few times. There were points where he did quit working for a given company because he was just upset with those disagreements professionally. But I mean, personally, there's just not a lot of dirt on the guy. He was a good person. He loved his family. And he excelled at what he did. What he did changed a lot of people's lives. As I said, I have read most of the Teen Titans library of titles, especially the Wolfman Perez run, and it's so inspiring to anybody who is a creative person. There's so much just great material in there. The work on Avengers, as I said, especially the Kurt Busiek run in the 90s, it's just everything he did, he gave his best in. As long as he was excited about the project, you were going to get gold. And everybody loved the man. Everybody who worked with him praised him. They may have had, as I said, a few editors may have had short-term disagreements with him. Those are the kind of disagreements that, by and large, different writers and artists are going to have with different editors. It's part of the business. But as I said, I had to do this because there's so much stuff that is great comic books that I have read that have kept me going as a fan for for so many years that George Perez contributed to. I mean, characters that he and Wolfman created for the Titans that have appeared in, I mean, multiple medias, that are characters that have become more popular over the decades. And, you know, new generations have fallen in love with these characters like Starfire and Cyborg and Beast Boy and Raven that he helped create and he helped make awesome. So just, I mean, thank you, George. You had a gift that you kept developing throughout your time. You know, I mean, he was winning awards left and right in the 80s, and he kept pushing himself to get better as an artist throughout the 90s and the 2000s. You know, he didn't just sit there and say, "Oh, I've won some industry awards. I'm making good money. I'm good enough." No, he kept developing his skills. So, you know, that's a great attitude for anybody to emulate. Keep pushing yourself creatively. Keep developing your talents and your skills. Enjoy what you do, and you know you can't go wrong. Just all positive thoughts and energy to the Perez family. And just goodbye, George. I don't know what else to say. I was a fan of his. I admired him from afar for many years, and I'm not going to be able to look at my comics the same way again. I mean, when I reread the Crisis or the Titans, or these Avengers books, it's just knowing that there's now a finite number of Perez comics, that he's not here to, you know, appearing at conventions anymore for people to get this autographed. It's the end of an era. A friend of mine put that. It is the end of an era for comic book industry, both at DC and Marvel. And I'm glad that they were able to set professional business disputes aside to reprint that JLA Avengers run, and that it was donated to the Hero Initiative. You know, that's what I can say to the comic book fans. We've gone a little longer than I normally do, but you know, this was a special episode in a way. But check out the Hero Initiative. You know, if you know, make a donation if you can. Do it for George. There's pick up his old books. Look up his cover art online. But just thank you, George, and goodbye. That's all. At the end, that's all I can say. Thank you, goodbye, and as long as I live, I will never forget just everything you brought to the comics industry. Yeah, I'm done. I'll see y'all next week. It'll be a little more, little more fun, a little more normal. But Mr. Perez deserved this. He deserved as many people as possible praising him. And that's all I can say.